So I would like to introduce very shortly into the topic. We call that topic Rethinking Horticulture, practical solutions for today's challenges in the world of horticulture, from the use of real-time environmental data, plant health, yield and plant management, through to AI aspects of digital solutions, crop forecasting, and of course, yield management. And therefore, we could invite a specialist, Darryn Keiller. He is founder and CEO at a company from the US, from the way beyond. So, Darryn, I would like to call you on stage, and we are very curious to hear what all about the possibilities we will see. So, please.
Thank you, Carsten. Thank you, Carsten. Hi, everybody. The company is incorporated in the US, but I am from New Zealand. So hopefully you can understand my English. Can you? Yep. Fantastic. Just so I get some idea of who is in the audience, maybe by a show of hands, could you indicate to me if you are representing a producer or a farming operation? How many of you are in the industry in that way? Thank you. Any of you from the seed or breeding or chemistry, crop protection part of the industry? Anyone from research, university, education? Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. That just gives me a bit of an idea. So I'm going to try and move around on the topic, try and keep it interesting for you. The topic is rethinking horticulture. So really it's about what needs to change. And there's a lot of challenges in fresh produce production. They have not gotten any better. In fact, they've got materially worse. So we're going to talk about some of those things and also how we believe they can be addressed as well. So I'll talk a little bit about Way Beyond. Way Beyond, I founded Way Beyond in 2016 in New Zealand. We moved the company to the US last year after we received investment capital from BASF Venture Capital Division. So it was at that point that we received investment from what is called a corporate venture capital company, a CVC. When I created the company, it was around recognizing the fact the industry in 2016 was very much living in the past. So those of you who are familiar, nothing much has changed in over 100 years. Everything is still centered around mechanical systems and also around knowledge. So basically the output of production is as good as the knowledge of the people who are operating the farming operations. So depending on whether you have a very capable team or a less capable team would dictate the outcome. So what we want to try and do now is move that forward by embracing new technologies that have emerged in the last 10 years. So cloud technology, data technology, artificial intelligence, sensor technology. How do we bring all those new emerging technologies together to improve production and to do it in a way that is more sustainable and beneficial for the planet? So that really is why I created Way Beyond. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the macro trends that are going on. You should be very familiar with most of these. I'm going to center it principally to Europe, even though I can talk about other parts of the world. But fresh produce consumption remains under pressure in Europe is one of them. And one of the biggest things that's driving production challenges is the global temperature increase. So we see this turning up in lots of places. There's been a lot of, the winters are getting colder, the summers are getting hotter. It's creating more extremes of production, even whether you're in open field or protected cropping. It doesn't matter too much, although protected cropping offers some advantage. But it's getting much warmer, and that's also creating issues with pests and disease because it's incubating those elements of production. Europeans are prepared to pay a premium. In fact, you'd be pleased to know that if you are based here in Europe, that you make a lot of producers happy because you're prepared to pay a little bit more per kilo, per gram than in other markets. But that needs to be a premium, high quality product to justify that. But even that price curve is getting a bit too high for some. One of the other things that's impacting on EU production, apart from energy and labor, is also the regulatory framework. So as the EU continues to make the regulatory environment much tougher, as it's also forcing production out of Europe and it's moving it to other parts of the world. And I think that's just an inevitable consequence of all these changes. And so it's moving a lot to the North African continent. So we work a lot with producers in Morocco, and we're also working with one of the large global seed companies in Kenya, who's doing seed production for peppers. But this is one of the big shifts going on, is that where your food comes from is changing. And a lot of it is because, essentially changes in Europe are forcing producers out of the European continent and into other food basket countries. You can feel free to disagree with me on any of these things, by the way, and you can have a chat to me about it afterwards. I'll skip over that. I've kind of said it. Labor is a major issue. It's a major issue all around the world, and this is another reason why technology is very important. And it's not all about robotics. If you're in a high-tech glass house in the Netherlands or in Germany, then robotics is a good option for you if you want to optimize labor. But if you're a large-scale producer using plastic greenhouses in Morocco, we've got 1,000 hectares of tomato production spread over 1,000 kilometers of Morocco. Robotics is not going to work for you. It's not a scalable technology or affordable technology. But there are other ways of helping optimize labor using data, using information, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. Morocco is leading the way in investing in digital. So Morocco has a lot of influence from their king, and the king operates a lot of his own farming operations in Morocco. He's a multi-crop producer. So he has open field, he has plantation crops, he has berries and tunnels, he has tomatoes and greenhouses, very diversified. But they have also now putting a infrastructure around the industry to shift it towards digital optimization so that Morocco, as a producer, becomes very competitive on a global basis. So this is a nation that's really switched on to modernizing what it's doing, compared to, say, Spain, where Spain is not keeping up with that shift. Spain has relied a lot on cheap land, cheap labor, free sunlight, its ability to just scale when it wants to produce more. And now it's hitting the limitations of those things. And that, again, is shifting competitive advantage to Morocco. We work also with a lot of producers in Mexico. Mexico produces primarily for the US North American market. We see very similar dynamics with our customers in Mexico who produce for the US. We see the same with Morocco. One of the other things I want to touch on is the growing population of the African continent. So rapidly over the coming decades, Africa is going to have the largest concentration of humanity. So up until now, it's been, I don't know if you guys saw the latest figures, but China, because of the low birth rate, they're expecting about 70 years from now that the population will go from 1.3 billion down to 500 million in China, because that's the rate of fall off in births. They're only having 1.1 births when they need 2.1 just to stand still. That's falling. India has now got the largest population. All of that's going to be surpassed by Africa in the next 20 years. And that population in Africa, 2.5 billion people, about 70% of it's going to be under the age of 30. So it's going to be a very young population, but that's a lot of people to feed and water and, care for. So there's some very big dynamic shifts going on. And those are things that if you're in the industry, you need to be thinking about, those macro shifts. What does that mean for you as a producer, as a seed company, as an educator, as a researcher? What are the things that you need to be thinking about? So I'm going to segue now into the area that we specialize in, and you can feel free to throw me questions along the way. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, but if there's anything you want to ask me, then feel free to put your hand up, and I'm happy to take questions. So I touched on this a little bit. We focus a lot on protected cropping. So protected cropping is net houses, plastic houses, shade houses, any form of protected system, not just high-tech glass houses. That's right at the top, and it only represents about 40,000 hectares. So if you took all the glass houses in the Netherlands, all the glass houses in Germany, in Canada, and the northeast of the US, they only total up to about 40,000 hectares of production out of 5.2 million. They're very small contributor. So we work with the mass of producers across the other markets. The challenges are many that the producers have in these markets, and what we're attempting to do is to address the most important ones by digitizing all the information. So it's an important thing as well, is that it's not just about data. You can get plant data, you can get environmental data, but you need practice data and you need knowledge. So if you're going to interpret data for the purpose of managing a pest or a disease or optimizing yield, you need to also have the knowledge that relates to that practice in the system as well. So we collect billions of data points, but we also invest in knowledge into the system. And that's how we're able to provide prescriptive direction to the growers about what actions they should be taking. It's only when you do that it becomes very powerful. So one of the things that we talk about is this dynamic around competency and digital readiness. So if you have a look up on the left axis, what we're talking about here is this idea around the fact that a lot of the industry has low capability, low understanding, through to those that have very high understanding of digital. This is a construct that we put together that we actually talk to our own customers about so they can understand where do they sit. We've obviously anonymized all of this. These represent real companies, and a lot of them are big global businesses. But to try and explain to them where do they sit on the journey at the moment and where do they need to move to. And it's fairly logical that in the top right-hand corner, you've got one of the large chemical seed companies, also German, that cuts down potential choices, who are basically sitting in that top right-hand quadrant because a lot of the users who use our technology are scientists, agronomists, highly skilled growers at that end. But at the other end, you've got low-tech producers and Sinaloa. If you're familiar with the state of Sinaloa, it's more well-known for the drug cartels. But essentially, that's where there's a lot of historical tomato production in Mexico. They're working with a labor force that has a very low knowledge and a low digital competency. So education is a really important part of what you have to also do. It's not about introducing new digital tools. There's lots of digital tools around, but if you don't educate people on how that changes the way they farm, it won't matter. It'll just be something you buy that gets left on the side because people never understood how to apply it. So in Mexico, the way we've addressed that is we work with Sapor University, and last year we created the first digital curriculum so that we could teach the students who are going to come through and be the farm managers and agronomists of tomorrow, now how to be digital farmers. not to be analog ones, which is what the current state of the industry is. So it's a very important shift that needs to go on, and education is a big part of making it work. Is there any questions on this? Is that a model? Does it make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing is you need to unify data. One of the big problems with a lot of the farm operators and the industry is that all the data is disaggregated. So information about yield, information about, pest and disease, information about labor is all sitting in different systems and tools and apps. And it's very challenging for the producers, like, well, how do I bring all of this together? And that's part of what we offer with Farm Road, is that you can unify all the data into one place. And that's kind of like the first step on the journey. And Farm Road is technology agnostic. So we can work with SAP, we can work with other startup companies. We don't care. All we're interested in is getting the right information into the system to then start doing clever things with it. Monitoring plant health is another big part of what we do, and how microclimates relate to that. And this is the concept of resolution. So a lot of farm operators rely on weather stations. But the problem with a weather station is it only gives you a very broad understanding what's actually happening climatically and environmentally in the area where the farms are located. It's very unapproximate. What we do is we provide a lot of sensor and data density around the plant so that we can actually understand how the plant is responding in real time to shifts that are going on around it. And then being able to do a diagnostic on what is actually driving improvement or degradation in the plant's performance. So this is another important aspect of what we do. And this also feeds into how artificial intelligence is applied. AI requires a lot of data to drive it. And you need to have enough diversity of data so that when you're using different AI methodologies, whether it's machine learning, reinforcement learning, that you're choosing the right tool for the job, but you need data density. So some of our services employ artificial intelligence and other ones just employ clever mathematics, but they're both important. So managing pests and disease is becoming a really big thing because, as we mentioned earlier, it's gotten a lot warmer. And since it got a lot warmer, there's been increasing outbreaks of pest and disease around the world because they just incubate faster and they're more pervasive. So early detection and early treatment is really important. The way the industry is doing it at the moment is that as soon as they detect that there's an outbreak of something, sometimes not even on their farm, but on the next door neighbor's farm, is they immediately blast the entire farm, which could be 300 hectares of production, with a treatment, and no offense to the crop protection guys in the room, but with a treatment where they didn't even need to do that. So the thing is, they're just treating everything as a defensive measure, a risk aversion measure. It's very expensive, and often they didn't need to do it. So that's one problem we're trying to address. The other one is false diagnosis. So I was talking to one of the largest producers, a VP of production in Mexico, just the other day. We were talking about the subject of misdiagnosis. Growers and agronomists are just the regular people. At the end of the day, they make mistakes. So the thing is, if they misdiagnose a condition and then they treat it incorrectly, it creates a bigger problem than the problem they started with. So a big part of what we're trying to do is support them with objective data, which then gives them a better diagnosis, and therefore they know what treatment program they should actually employ. So these are some of the benefits of using data-driven digital agronomy. As you start to get more objective assessment of what is the actual condition of the plant, what is actually happening, which is how a pest or disease outbreak could affect its productivity. So this is from one of our customers, which is African Blue. African Blue has 580 hectares of blueberry production in Morocco. It's spread over 9 separate farms. And so they used our platform to firstly unify all their data. They have consulting agronomists. Those agronomists are in different countries. So even though all the farming operations are in Morocco, their consultants are in different countries, and using Farm Road, they can now go in and see what's happening at these farms without having to travel to them, which is a massive advantage. So one of the ways that they use the data is they produce daily agronomy reports. So basically overnight, so the data will collate itself. They perform the analysis in the morning, and then they'll normally produce an agronomy report that goes out to the local farm manager the following day. And so they produce that every day. Before they had the system, they had nothing. So there was no objective information coming in before they were using Farm Road. I've talked about managing crop risks, so I won't dwell on that one, but another one in berry production is frost. So frost is a major issue. And so being able to anticipate a frost means they can better manage the crop in real time. I think this, again, interpretive thing around temperature is a big deal. You need to understand, what is actually optimal for the plant between positive stress and actually something that could be negative for the plant. So just to summarize, you've got climate analysis, but for us, that's microclimate. So that's the microclimate around the plant, not a general assessment of the environment. So high resolution understanding of what's going on around the plant. It's not all plants, it's normally a sample section within a greenhouse that is then representative of what is going on across the rest of that greenhouse. Plant balance is another thing we focus on. Plant balance being, is the plant in a more generative state or is it in a more vegetative state? This is a very important concept for making decisions around plant steering. Where do I want to take the plant? Do I want it to be in its optimal balance between vegetative, producing vines and leaves, or do I want it to move to a more generative state where it's fruit producing? And so this is part of crop steering. So plant balance is an indicator that we give to say which direction is it traveling in. And then there's short-term yield forecasting, which we call easy yield. So essentially it's looking out a few weeks just to say which way is production trending. And you can do that down to the greenhouse level, down to the row. So again, you get a very high resolution of what is actually happening in your production in terms of forecasting yield output. And for those of you in the industry, it's very important to provide accurate information over to the sales and marketing department, who are the ones making the commitment to the buyer of the produce, to make sure that they're getting delivered what you promised them you would deliver. So we don't just work with the producers, we also work with the seed companies. This is Matt Horsmeyer is the head of seed production for Bayer Vegetable Seeds. We've been working with them now for almost 3 years. We work with them in several countries, but essentially they've gotten a huge benefit out of this high resolution analysis of what's happening with the plant and the environment in real time, because for them it's about optimizing seed quality. So a lot of the work we do with them is around seed optimization, not fruit optimization, because even though those two things are related, they are different. This is where we get a lot more deep tech, and we apply a lot more advanced mathematics and AI into what we do around the seed quality optimization. But ultimately, that benefits the producer because they're getting a higher grade seed at the point of production. Okay, so I'm at the end. You'll be pleased to note. So we've got 2 case studies here you can scan the QR code for. One is on African blue, who I mentioned earlier. The other one is a more if you're into mathematics and looking at AI, then you can scan the beyond yield prediction white paper. It's fairly high level, but it'll give you some idea of the type of thinking that goes into thinking about yield. And what we've realized is that actually there's no point in chasing the nirvana of 99% accuracy. There's too many outliers, too many variables to do that. But if you can get predictions for about 95%, then you're doing very well. Keeping in mind that the industry baseline is 75 to 80% accuracy on prediction. So we can get up to about 95%, and that's really where the top of the curve sits. But if you want to kind of dig into what drives that, the white paper is very interesting, and it was authored by 2 of the PhDs that I have on staff who are my practice leads in that area. Okay, that is me. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Darryn. Are there any questions? I think that was a lot of stuff, a lot of information, and maybe the people need some time.
I mean, just to summarize, I guess my key message is things need to change. You know, we can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them for the last 30 years. So, you know, the challenge is on everybody to participate in that process. It's not, you know, way beyond as one actor, but education plays a big part. Producers changing their production strategy is another part. It's about people thinking about how we move forward as an industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions from the audience?
This is a unique opportunity to ask this specialist. On the other hand, you are exhibitor at Food Logistica, as far as I know, and
We are.
can reach you where? Where can we find them?
Lottie.
Okay.
Okay, we're in all 3.1 and C30 is our stand. So you come and visit the team. There's 8 of us there, so plenty of people to talk to. And we have the whole system is there. So everything I've talked about, we can show you for real.
All right. Yeah. Then I would say thank you very much. Nice to meet you. Nice to hear what how possible is and will be in the future. And as you said, I don't think we can go on as we did it in the last 10, 20 or 40, 50 years. We have a climate change, and we have to look for sustainable management of resources, of water, and so on. The development of the population in some countries and continents are another big challenge. I don't want to say problem, but it's a challenge. We have to meet these challenges and to handle them. And and I think we should be grateful for every tool we can get to manage that. And maybe we have one. Thank you very much, Darryn.